Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Everyday Health Stories, the podcast where we dive deep into the fascinating world of medical science through the power of storytelling. I'm Anna, and here with me is the one and only Dr. Kota Reddy. How are you, Dr. Reddy?
Hey, Anna. I'm doing pretty good, and I'm super excited to chat with you today. We've got a few things we need to talk about.
Same here. Today we're diving into cholesterol spikes, liver health, and how, things we eat every day can really affect us in ways we don't even realize.
Absolutely, and it's also interconnected. Cholesterol, sugar, and certain carbs, when they interact, they can cause some surprising effects on our health.
All right, I'm all ears. Let's start with the basics. If someone's cholesterol suddenly jumps up out of nowhere, what's usually going on with that?
Great question. So when cholesterol spikes like that, there are typically three big factors at play: sugar, starch, and fat intake. They're the main drivers behind these sudden changes.
Wait, so you're telling me just common foods like those can cause these big shifts?
Yes, it sounds surprising, but that's how it works. Let's break it down a bit. When you eat sugar, for example, it goes straight to the liver. And the liver, it converts that sugar into fat.
Wait, hang on. So sugar turns into fat just like that?
That's right. When you consume too much sugar, the liver changes it into fat, and this fat starts to build up. Eventually, the liver itself becomes what we call fatty, and that's when we run into trouble because it stops responding to insulin properly.
Oh, so that's where insulin resistance starts coming in?
Yep, and because the liver's not handling insulin well anymore, every time you eat more starch, like rice, beans, or lentils, the starch gets converted into glucose, or sugar. Instead of processing it properly, the liver just stores it as more fat.
That sounds like such a downward spiral. I mean, the liver's already struggling, and then it's just forced to handle more.
That's pretty much it. And on top of all this, because the liver is overloaded, it also starts pushing excess into fat cells throughout the body. So sugar and starch work together to make the problem worse. It's like a cascade effect.
Wow. Okay. So now I'm thinking, what happens when someone with a fatty liver then eats more fat? Is that where cholesterol issues start popping up?
You're absolutely onto something. So, once your liver's already fatty, if you eat more fat, whether it's from yogurt, milk, cheese, nuts, or meat, that fat still goes through the liver, but now the liver isn't processing it as it should. And here's the thing. When the liver's overloaded, it starts producing cholesterol at a much higher rate. We're talking like 10 times higher.
10 times higher? That's pretty wild. So even a little extra fat can lead to a big cholesterol spike if someone's liver is already overburdened?
Yes, it's not just about the fat you're eating. The liver's already been handling all this sugar and starch, so when more fat comes in, it reacts almost disproportionately. A normal cholesterol level of, say, 200 could jump to 300 without much effort.
That's actually kind of scary. I mean, I always knew diet affected cholesterol, but not to this extreme.
I know, right? It really is surprising. And it's not just the fat you eat in that moment, it's the whole buildup. Your liver's been working overtime, handling sugars and starches, getting fatty, and when you add more fat to the mix, it's like, boom, it just can't keep up.
So, to recap a bit, sugar and starch start this whole thing by pushing the liver into overdrive, right? It turns sugar into fat, builds up this fatty layer in the liver, and then the liver doesn't handle insulin as well. And then any extra fat just pushes it over the edge.
You got it. And that's why a sudden cholesterol spike can happen so easily. People might think, oh, I just had a few fatty meals, but really, it's been building up over time. It's that sugar and starch from things like sweets or rice that are setting the stage for these problems.
It's like this perfect storm. And I guess if people don't know how connected everything is, they'd never even realize it. So, okay, what about short-term changes? Like if someone eats a lot of sugar or fatty foods just before a blood test, could that really impact their cholesterol levels that much?
Oh, it absolutely can. Even a few days of high fat or sugary eating can affect triglycerides more noticeably. Cholesterol itself is usually more about long-term habits, but certain people, especially if they already have a fatty liver, could see a big spike from just a weekend of indulgence.
Wow. So you're saying that even short-term changes like eating out a couple of times could lead to an unexpected spike if you've already got a fatty liver?
Exactly. Like let's say someone went out for a big meal, maybe had some dessert, fatty foods, then goes for a blood test the next day. They might be shocked by the results because that fatty liver is working against them. I actually had this happen to me once. I had a small bowl of biryani which had apricots mixed in, and the next day, my triglycerides shot up from 60 to 225, one meal.
No way, from just one bowl of biryani?
Yes, and it's because apricot is a fruit, and that sugar, combined with the fatty meal, just hit my liver hard. The liver was like, oh no, more sugar, and it responded by kicking out triglycerides. It was a good reminder of how much of a difference even one indulgent meal can make.
That's a real eye-opener. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by this. So, if someone has had high cholesterol or fatty liver in the past, is there a way to know the full extent of the damage?
Definitely. If you want to get a clear idea of how your liver's doing, we can do a FibroScan. It's a non-invasive test, super quick, and it can tell us if your liver is fatty, how fatty it is, mild, moderate, or severe, and even if you have scarring.
Oh, wow. So that's different from a regular ultrasound?
Yes, because a typical ultrasound can sometimes be inconclusive for fatty liver, but a FibroScan is designed to specifically measure liver stiffness and fat content. It's just 10 minutes, and you get a much clearer picture of what's going on. Unfortunately, insurance doesn't cover it, but if you really want to know where you stand, it's incredibly helpful.
That's good to know. It seems like it'd be totally worth it, just to have a concrete answer on your liver health.
That's right. I had a patient who looked perfectly healthy, numbers all seemed fine, but we did a FibroScan and found severe scarring. So, having that test showed us exactly where she stood and allowed us to act on it.
And for listeners who might be hearing all this and getting a little concerned, please remember this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider for any medical concerns.
That's right.
And hey, listeners, take a moment to hit pause and subscribe to the podcast. You'll get notified of new episodes, gain access to exclusive content, and join a community that's making positive changes, one story at a time.
Yeah, definitely. We've got so much more to share, and the whole goal is to help people make informed choices about their health.
Absolutely. All right, so let's say someone finds out they have a fatty liver. Maybe they even have high cholesterol. What steps would you recommend to start turning things around?
Well, the good news is that in many cases, fatty liver is reversible, especially in the early stages. The first step would be to cut back on sugar and refined carbs. Those are the big culprits here. If you reduce sugar intake and limit starchy foods like rice and bread, you're already on the right track.
So it's really about dialing back on those, huh? What else?
Yeah, cutting back on sugar and starch is the foundation. But next, you'll want to add more healthy fats and proteins to your diet, like nuts, fish, lean meats, but in moderation. And exercise, regular physical activity, helps improve insulin sensitivity, which is super important for liver health.
Oh, okay, so it's not just about what you eat, but also how active you are. Does any specific type of exercise make a difference?
Honestly, whatever you enjoy and can stick with is best. Walking, biking, weight training, even 20-30 minutes a day can make a huge difference. It's all about staying consistent, because consistency is what helps the liver start shedding that excess fat.
Got it. So it sounds like it's mostly lifestyle changes, but is there anything else people can do? Like any foods that are particularly beneficial for the liver?
Absolutely. Foods high in antioxidants can be incredibly helpful. Things like leafy greens can support liver health by helping reduce inflammation. And berries, once in a while, they have antioxidants, but they also contain sugars, so you don't want to overdo it with those.
That's great. So by cutting back on sugar and starch, adding in healthy fats and antioxidants, and staying active, people can actually make a real difference in their liver health.
Yes, it's all about creating a healthier environment for the liver to function optimally. And the liver is quite resilient. It responds well to these changes if you're consistent. So, even if you've had a few high cholesterol tests or a fatty liver diagnosis, there's a lot you can do to improve.
That's such a positive note to end on. I think we covered a lot today. How sugar, starch, and fat all impact cholesterol, how they interact with the liver, and some practical steps for managing it. So thank you, Dr. Reddy, for sharing all this. I think it's going to make a big difference for our listeners.
Thanks, Anna. It's been a pleasure. And remember, everyone, take care of your liver. It's working hard for you every day.
Yes, definitely. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to Everyday Health Stories. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, We're here to make health simple, relatable, and something you can actually act on.
Take care, everyone. Until next time.
Bye.